eastern Ukraine in an effort to get Ukraine to surrender part of its territory. James Carafano joins us now. He's the Vice President of Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation. So Russia over the weekend said that its goals here in the eastern part of the country had been met. It was going to now move its forces to consolidate its security in the eastern part. But Jack Keane said earlier today, don't believe that, because up here in the Chernobyl area, one of Russia's top commanders is reconstituting forces for another potential move on Kyiv. What do you think James is going?
Well, that's certainly a possibility, right? So there are reports of the Russians pulling forces back for the purpose of reconstituting. So the way this works is, there's nothing harder than attacking with tired, exhausted troops. And you would be shocked at what 24 hours of nobody shooting at you, the difference that makes. Like one hot meal, one change of socks, a little sitting down, reorganizing, and what that does to have combat power to go back into the fight again. So it's certainly possible that they would do that. Part, I think, of these Ukrainian counterattacks has been to specifically limit the ability to, let them start where they left off, right? Yeah. To push them back so they're fighting for ground that they've already taken. So I think the Ukrainians have already kind of baked in that they're not just assuming that Kyiv is safe forever.
Right. Okay, let's move down to the south of the country, because this is an area where Russia is strongest. And here in the Donbass region, again, that's where they say that they're going to consolidate their forces. We've also got Mariupol here, which has been ground almost into dust. And if I go ahead here one more frame and we show Mariupol here, I'm thinking one of the reasons maybe why they've ground it into dust is because there is a highway that goes right through here and all the way out like this. This is the E58 highway that would connect Rostov-on-Don, which is in western Russia, with Crimea. This is potentially the land bridge that Russia wants to have to Crimea. And if you grind this to dust, you basically erase the city. Do you have a clear route to get from Russia to Crimea?
So this is particularly important if you're stopping, right? In other words, if the Russians are really going to go over to the defense in some of these areas and hold on to what they have, if you think about moving stuff, you want to be able to move stuff two ways. You want to be able to move supplies, ammunition, fuel, get it up to the front. But then, since you never know where the enemy might attack you or where you might want to threaten the enemy, you want to be able to move forces laterally. Yeah. So having the ability, this is called a line of communication, having the ability to shift resources laterally along a front, that makes an attacker's job way harder.
Yeah. And Zelensky, in peace talks that will start tomorrow in Istanbul, is saying, look, we don't need to be a member of NATO. We talked about this before. Yeah. The first time you came on, he said we could be neutral, some security guarantees. I mean, there's a thought that this is what Putin wants to make as the border between West Ukraine and East Ukraine. Don't know if that would fly. Maybe you cut a border here. Or maybe, if you're Zelensky, you say, none of that's going to fly. Russia, get out. So how does this end?
Well, first of all, I think unless the Ukrainians negotiate from a position of strength, which means unless they're negotiating from the Russians essentially de facto acknowledging they're not going to achieve any more goals on the ground, that they've accepted that, then he's just negotiating his surrender. And then they're going to lose everything. So let's assume that the Russians say, okay, we can't get any more on the ground. We're going to quit at this point and we're going to cut a deal. Then if Zelensky wants this country to be around, he has to cut a deal where he can make sure that this scenario never happens again, which means that the Ukraine has to be able to have both the freedom and the capacity to defend itself. Now, it could be part of NATO. It doesn't have to be part of NATO. It could be neutral, but it has to be neutral in the way like a Finland is neutral, which means that you can't limit how big our army is. You can't limit what weapons we have. You can't limit who we train with, who we practice with. You can't even limit what nations we might invite to bring to the country.
But Putin said he wants to demilitarize Ukraine.
Yeah, well, that's basically a death warrant for Ukraine. Yeah. So now what they might agree to is to agree to disagree. They might agree to a neutrality in which Putin says, oh, you agreed to demilitarize, and which Ukrainians said, no, we didn't. And then it'll be de facto about how strong does Ukraine build itself? Look, for Putin, let's be honest. If he's still in power, this is not the end of the day. He's got other places to go. He can go to the Balkans, go to Moldova, you can go to Crimea. Not Crimea. He can go to Georgia. He can attack a NATO ally. So he can always get another bite of the apple. But what Ukraine has to do is like, dude, you can get another bite of the apple. I get that. But you're never going to get another bite here. And Ukraine can only do that if they can do what they didn't do this time, which is to demonstrate enough capacity for Putin to recognize this is too tough a country to attack.
Well, they've certainly proven it so far. James Carafano, always good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, my friend.
Senator?
All right, thank you, John. In Ukraine's capital, school children today resuming classes, at least remotely for now, but it doesn't mean the war-torn country is getting anywhere close to back to a normal. As teachers give kids lessons at the same time, bombs continue to kill. Alex Hogan is live in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv for us in the evening hours there now. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Sandra. There's a lot of speculation from city leaders here in Lviv that the attacks that we saw in the closest part of the city since the start of the war had been more than anything a message to the White House, as President Biden at the time was speaking in nearby Poland. Negotiations are set to take place in Istanbul between delegates from Ukraine and Russia, but we have not seen anything of fruition so far come out of these types of conversations. Attacks show no sign of slowing down.
As a result of these attacks, we have 41 people wounded, including 5 children. These are all areas of Mariupol and its suburbs.
Mariupol continually under attack as residents are building makeshift graves. Shelling today has intensified around Kyiv. And at the start of the war, the UN warned that the conflict could send up to 4 million people out of the country. We are nearing that number. The UN says more than 3.8 million people have escaped Ukraine, most of them leaving everything behind. And new today, at least half of those 3.8 million people are children. In the Luhansk region, the situation continues to intensify amid endless fighting. The conflict blocking international aid groups from getting through to some of those most hard-hit areas. Today here in Lviv, families gathered at a funeral to honor 2 Ukrainian troops killed in the ongoing war, a man in his 30s and a man in his 40s. The families stood there amid the sounds of sirens, not heading for shelter as they honored the dead. We have heard sirens here today in Lviv, but people were still walking about. The streets behind me are starting to quiet. We're seeing fewer people, fewer cars, as the curfew soon will go into effect. John, Sandra.
Alex Hogan live in Lviv for us. Alex, thank you very much. John.
Sandra, as Alex was mentioning, the number of people who have escaped Ukraine quickly approaching 4 million, 30,000 of them making their way into Poland each and every day. Alexis McAdams live in Poland near the border with Ukraine with the latest from there. Alexis?
Good afternoon. Well, I'm at the Medyka border crossing, which is the busiest border crossing, John, between the Polish and Ukrainian border here. You can see behind me there's still a steady flow of people and lots of tents that are set up for those people to get the products that they need as they flow in every single day. Thousands of people coming in here through the Medyka border by the day. And tonight, though, John, what we're seeing is actually families and their small children are going back into Ukraine. So they're coming in here, picking up some of the supplies, and then going right back across the border to see what's left behind of their life that they were forced to leave and flee with just pretty much the clothes on their backs. Those people, though, tried to hold out, they say, until they really just couldn't take it anymore because the shelling grew so close. Listen to one of those people we talked to.
Near the place we live, several houses were destroyed as well, so it was the matter of time when this bomb would come to our place.
Now, a month in, about 4 million Ukrainians have fled. 2 million here to Poland and others to nearby Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. The refugees who made it out alive have stories of survival. Many tell me they tried to hold out, but that shelling just kept getting worse near their homes. One of the hardest hit areas in Ukraine is Mariupol. It's a southern port city pummeled by Russian troops. Take a look here. You can see that car there was struck with shrapnel. Inside, a family of 6 was fleeing from the war zone. Kids in the car when that glass was shattered and hit by small pieces of metal, they say, that just kept falling from the sky. The family says NATO needs to step up and do more and close the sky. Listen.
All the NATO should do this. I do believe in this. In this case, we would save our country, I think. So they should close the sky 100%.
And doctors here at this border in Medyka tell me that the people who are coming in right now do have severe injuries. Most of those people that are coming in from Mariupol, where they were hit so hard by Putin's aggression. They just keep getting pummeled there in that area. Those are kids and women that these doctors who are volunteering tell me have pretty much war injuries at this point. So there's still a lot more people and a lot more help that's needed. We'll send it back to you.
Well, thank goodness some of those people from Mariupol are finally making their way out of the country and there to where they're in safe hands. And saw some happy hugs behind you just a moment ago. Alexis McAdams for us. Thanks, Alexis. Sandra?
All right, John.